My name is Billy Busby, and I want to become a better storyteller. To achieve this, I'm going to follow the hourglass approach, right? Which is going through a body of work and reading and researching the bodies of work of those I respect and came before me. When reflecting on the primal inclination strategy, I kept thinking of myself as a 7-year-old kid watching The Empire Strikes Back for the first time. And at the end of that movie, I was like, how in the world could someone make something this complicated? And I was kind of determined at that point to learn how to do that. I think of Hunter S. Thompson when reflecting on occupying the perfect niche. So here was a journalist that lived and breathed the worlds that he wrote about, especially in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Works like Hell's Angels, where he literally spent a year living and riding with the motorcycle club, to Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail, where he followed then President Nixon's 1972 re-election campaign. Like, the guy lived and breathed in that moment. Avoiding the false path to me means staying true to myself and avoiding some of the recommendations from those that aren't on my path. So the text references Freddie Roach, and for those that know his body of work, know that he was the perfect example to use for adaptation, right? So I'm sure for Freddie Roach, it was not an easy transition to go from fighter to trainer. But once he quit looking back and once he let go of the past, like, it kind of freed him up to become who he's most famous for, right? Like, training these amazing fighters, and his body of work speaks for itself. The life or death strategy mentions that mastery will require a sacrifice and that you cannot have everything in the present. And for whatever reason, it made me think of that old saying that it's not the destination but the journey that matters, right? Because on the journey, you're going to have obstacles and you're going to have things that are going to be very trying at times, but when you look back on them and reflect back on them, you're going to be glad you did that, right? Like, it was almost training for something else. But the trick is going to be in the heat of the moment, being able to maintain that mindset, right? Like, what would my future self think of going through this right now? The turning point for me was right after I got out of the Navy. I had spent 10 years in the Navy as a corpsman, and the last 5 of that was spent as a physical therapy technician. So when I got out, I had to reconsider my entire being, right? My past, my present, and my future. And I also needed to provide for my family. So the natural role for me was to either stay with the military police type thing or go back into medicine. And I was already kind of burnt out on medicine at that point. So I went the police officer route, and long story, but it wasn't for me, right? I respect police officers. I know what they go through. And it just wasn't for me. So after some careful considerations, I went the path of physical therapy mostly for money reasons. And after a few years of that, I'm not going to say I wasn't happy, but it's not what I wanted to do, right? I didn't get that fulfillment that I needed or wanted. So I ended up coming here to Full Sail for my digital cinematography degree. And it's funny, once you become on the right path, I started making more money. I was healthier, happier, and my schedule was more to what it normally would be, right? In an ideal situation. So it was funny that all these things kind of came together once I got on the path I was meant to go on. My dream career path would include being free and having the resources to follow up on my interest and the stories that I want to tell, right? There's a couple of different ways that I could finance that journey through sponsorships or different social media platforms, but those could prove to be a little bit tricky in the world of journalism. 2 personal goals that I have for the next 3 weeks are, 1, to try to find a workable schedule to work school back into my life. My life is pretty busy as it is, so that's something I'm kind of working through this month. And then the other thing too is going to be trying to make sure I'm ahead of my assignments, right? I don't want to wait till the last minute and try to rush through assignments, right? I want to put assignments out ahead of time so I can take the time and effort that they deserve so that I get out what I put in. So that's it for today. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.